My sister-in-law left me out of the family photos on a trip I paid for, so I stopped paying for her luxury room, and now she's broke and stuck with the bill. You won't believe it. I'm writing this whole story while on vacation in Miami. Yes, it's a shame. So, I am 47 years old, along with my wife Rachel, who is 42, her parents who are 76 and 70, and her sister Ella, who is 38. We came on vacation 2 days ago. It was supposed to be a fun trip, but Ella is giving me a hard time. She is simply ruining my trip, and I don't know how to deal with this. Rachel and I have been married for 10 years. We are both financially well off and travel a lot. We plan at least 3 nice vacations a year and many weekend getaways to relax. We both have demanding jobs with good salaries, we don't have children, and we like living this way. For the past 2 years, we have made sure to take Rachel's parents on at least 1 trip a year. They are older, and her dad is dealing with serious health issues, so her mom can't travel alone with him. For this summer, her dad kindly asked to travel to Miami. They had their honeymoon here, and for some reason, he fears this will be his last trip. God forbid. So we agreed. He even offered to share some expenses because, as you know, a week of vacation in Miami is expensive, but we turned him down. We assured him that it was entirely on us, as I am earning well and they have been very good to me. However, this year Rachel's sister Ella also joined. She is not doing well financially and has 3 school-aged children. Every year when we plan a trip and come back, she feels sad because she hasn't been able to afford a trip since her honeymoon. This year she asked us directly if she could come with us. I agreed, knowing I would have to pay because, of course, she cannot afford a vacation in Miami. I didn't mind too much since sometimes you have to support family. I made the reservations for everyone, flights and hotels. But from the moment we landed, Ella started acting strange. And by strange, I mean she went out of her way to exclude me from everything. At first I didn't think much of it. We arrived at a beach resort, and after settling in, Ella wanted to take a family photo. It seemed innocent enough, right? Wrong. Just as we were about to pose, she turned to me and said, "Oh, can you take the photo for us? We want just the 4 of us. Mom, Dad, Rachel, and me." I was baffled, but I didn't make a scene. Maybe they just wanted a photo of the original family. I thought it would end there, but it didn't. Ella made this a recurring theme during the trip. Every time we stopped at a picturesque spot or did something fun, she would say, "Oh, just the 4 of us." Or, "This one is just for the family." Guess who was always holding the camera? Me. Several times Rachel defended me and said, "He is part of the family too." My in-laws also asked me to join, but Ella never missed a chance to leave me out. The photos she uploaded to social media barely included me. It looked like just the 4 of them had come on vacation. It was frustrating. I wasn't included in half of the trip's photos, and instead of making memories, I found myself playing photographer or bag carrier. Later in the afternoon, we decided to spend time at the hotel pool. They had a beautiful infinite pool overlooking the ocean. I thought it would be a relaxing break after all the walking we had done. When I was about to join everyone in the water, Ella turned to me and said, "Can you stay out for a moment? We want a girls' photo, just Rachel, Mom, and me." I thought it was fine, no big deal. But after they took that photo, Ella made sure I was conveniently busy every time they brought out the camera. First it was just for the women, then she wanted just the sisters. And of course, another one with the original family. If she disliked my company so much, why did she even come with us? Yesterday we went sightseeing on a quiet boat ride. It should have been a calm family day. But of course, Ella found a way to leave me out again. Most of the activities in these places are arranged in seats for 4 people, 2 plus 2. Since there were 5 of us, Ella suggested that Rachel's parents sit together in one row and Ella would sit with Rachel in the next. That would make it easier to take family photos and make memories. That left me alone. Ella turned to me and said, "Oh, you can take the next spot. That way it's more balanced." They even bought a souvenir photo from the ride with me sitting alone like a stranger. I understand that sometimes someone has to be left out of the frame, but why is it always me? Ella could also switch places sometime, right? Another night we went to a fancy seafood restaurant. It was one of those places where you are expected to make a reservation days in advance, but I had already taken care of all that, making sure we had a large table with a perfect view of the sunset. When we arrived at the restaurant, they took us to a round table for 6 people. Now anyone who has been in this situation knows that the best seats are the ones facing the view. Naturally, I thought Rachel and I would sit together with her parents facing us, leaving Ella on one side. But as we were about to sit down, Ella quickly slid into the seat next to Rachel, and her parents took the 2 seats facing the view, leaving me on the side with no view, squeezed between Rachel's parents and the waiter's station. Rachel tried to protest, saying she wanted to sit with me, but Ella snapped at her, telling her to stop being so clingy and that it was a family trip. I bit my tongue. I thought, it's fine, it's just one meal. But halfway through dinner, when I tried to join the conversation about family stories, Ella kept changing the subject to things I wasn't involved in. She talked about childhood memories, high school trips, and inside jokes that naturally didn't include me. Rachel, and even her parents, tried to include me by giving context behind these stories, but Ella kept interrupting, making everything feel forced. By dessert, I was practically a ghost at the table, ignored while everyone laughed and reminisced. Today we booked a spa day. I booked a private suite for Rachel and me, another for my in-laws, and a single room for Ella. However, my father-in-law wasn't feeling well and wanted to spend the day resting on the beach. I thought the 4 of us could still go and have fun, but Ella pulled another one of her tricks. She said, "You should probably stay here and keep Dad company. It would be nice for just the women to do the spa treatments together. I want to spend time with Mom and have a girls' day." I was furious but tried not to explode. I paid for all this, and now I was being told it was a women-only activity. After this, I wasn't in the mood to join anyway, so I stayed and relaxed on the beach beach with my father-in-law. We had some beers and talked about life. He gave me his advice. It was fun and comforting. I wanted to share my frustration about Ella, but I kept it to myself so as not to ruin the mood. Now, with 3 days left, I really can't stand Ella. However, I don't want to let my anger ruin the trip for my in-laws. How do I handle this situation? Edit 1. Yes, I expressed my concerns to Rachel the other night. Ella understands that I felt hurt but says that Ella might not be doing it on purpose. Growing up, they hardly took any family vacations. My father-in-law was mostly deployed in the military, so maybe Ella wants to make the most of the opportunity to be with family. Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm exaggerating or acting entitled. Do you think it's intrusive of me to feel entitled to be included in everything just because I paid for the trip? Am I overthinking this? Update 1. Thanks to everyone for being on my side. I know sometimes it doesn't seem right, but what she did wasn't okay. Spoiler, I got revenge, but to find out, keep reading. By the end of the trip, I had had enough. I was being treated like a stranger on a trip I had paid for, and I felt my blood boil every time Ella left me out. The straw that broke the camel's back came the day before we were due to leave. I pulled Rachel aside and asked her why she wasn't defending me. I told her I felt like a nobody, and Ella could see how hurt I was. She sighed and said, I know, I see it, but confronting Ella will only make things worse. We don't want to ruin the trip for my parents, especially with Dad's condition. Can we just let it go for now? I didn't want to create drama either, especially with Rachel's dad's health condition, so I let it go at that moment, but deep down, I was already planning my revenge. I wasn't going to let Ella get away with treating me like this on a trip I had funded. The day we were leaving, I told Rachel to go to the airport with her parents, and that I would go with Ella. Rachel looked at me and said, I know what you're trying to do. I replied, of course you know, and now stay neutral like you have been the whole trip. She finally nodded. Then I went to the hotel front desk to settle the bills. The hotel operated in such a way that although the room rental was paid in advance, all extra charges like meals, room service, and activities were settled at checkout. I asked the manager to separate the bills for each suite, making up some excuse about taxes. He agreed. It was no big deal for them. I proceeded to pay everything for my suite and my in-laws' suite, but for Ella's, I asked the manager to hand the bill to Ella. By then, Rachel and my in-laws had already left for the airport. They needed to arrive early to arrange wheelchairs and such. The manager called Ella and asked her to come down to the reception to settle her bill. Ella came down immediately, and when the manager handed her the bill, you should have seen the look on her face. She looked at me confused. I stood there with a straight face. She got a little nervous and asked, aren't you going to cover mine? I smiled and replied, I already paid for my family. You can cover yours. She hadn't realized how much she had accumulated during the trip. Room service, spa treatments, the minibar, and all the extras she had been ordering left her with a hefty bill. She swiped her credit card, only for it to be declined. Apparently, her card barely covered half the amount. She was furious, struggling to find a way to pay. She shot me pleading looks from time to time, but I felt absolutely no pity for Ella. She got nasty looks from the hotel staff and other guests, which was quite satisfying. I just sat on the couch and enjoyed the show. I was prepared to pay her bill if she came and apologized for her behavior, but she was too proud to do that. Instead, she hoped I would voluntarily offer to pay. She ended up calling her husband, who was not at all happy about having to bail her out. The bill was almost a month of his salary, if not more. After an awkward argument, she finally got him to send the money to cover the bill, but she was furious. She wanted to leave me at the hotel to deal with the problem, but since the reservation was under my name, she couldn't. I was prepared to face the consequences and pay the bill if Ella couldn't cover it, but I had already achieved my revenge by embarrassing her. She finally managed to pay, and the hotel got us a taxi to the airport. She didn't speak to me after that. To add to her misery, I hadn't checked her into her flight either. So when we arrived at the airport, we were already rushed and late. On top of that, Ella had to deal with the hassle of getting her boarding pass. As if that wasn't enough, I managed to get Rachel, my in-laws, and myself upgraded to business class, leaving Ella in economy. I left her in line and went to priority boarding. When she finally boarded the flight, we were already seated. She walked past us but didn't speak to anyone. She was fuming. The moment we landed, Ella went straight to her parents and told them everything, trying to paint me as the villain who abandoned her at the hotel. She made such a fuss that she stressed her dad out. She started arguing right there in the airport, crying as she narrated how I humiliated her in front of the hotel staff and guests, and how I didn't upgrade her class or check her in. I calmly explained my perspective, that she had spent the whole trip excluding me and treating me like a stranger even though I had paid for everything. So why should I cover her expenses if Ella didn't consider me part of the family? Rachel's mother, trying to keep the peace, just shook her head and said, Ella, enough. We don't want to get involved. We saw how you pushed him aside the whole time. We asked you to let him join, but you had your own plans to leave him out. Now deal with it. But Ella wasn't done. She accused me of using money to control everyone and called me a horrible man. She looked at Rachel and said, you teamed up with your husband to humiliate your sister, your own blood. You'll see what this man is going to do to you. He's going to cheat on you, and you won't be able to do anything because you're blinded by his money. This led to an ugly fight between Rachel and Ella. Rachel's dad, who had been mostly silent during the trip, simply said, Ella, your brother-in-law has already done enough for you. If you can't appreciate it, you better shut up. Absolute silence followed, and he asked me to take him home as soon as possible. I helped him into the car, and then we left, leaving Ella at the airport. She was too proud to join us in the car, even though she hadn't arranged transportation. Maybe she took a taxi back, which would have cost her a lot. Her house is about 60 to 75 miles from the airport. I dropped my in-laws off at their house, and they both thanked me for everything. Their gratitude was the only thing that mattered to me. My mother-in-law hugged me longer than usual, and that made my day. Afterward, Rachel and I went home. We were both silent on the subject, ignoring the elephant in the room. The next day, we went back to work, and life seemed to return to normal. But the other day, Rachel broke the silence and said Ella was having problems with her husband over the payment. He asked her to pay him back every penny since she couldn't cover her excess spending. Now she is broke from paying that and her credit card bills. Rachel supported me, but admitted that maybe I took things a little too far. Still, she acknowledged that Ella needed to learn a lesson. She had brought it upon herself. So, Reddit, was I the bad guy for letting her pay her own bills? Or did she deserve it after everything she put me through? Update 2. I received mixed reactions on my last post. Some people said I went overboard and basically wanted me to be a pushover. Well, I'm not that. I know my worth. I didn't expect Ella to treat me like her servant, but if she needed some respect, the least I expected was to be included, right? As I mentioned, I was willing to pay if Ella came over and fixed things, but she wasn't willing to acknowledge her mistakes. Anyway, I don't owe anyone an explanation for my actions. I did what felt right. Ella has never been close to me. Sure, we see each other at family gatherings, and she visits Rachel often, but beyond greetings, we barely have conversations. However, it didn't bother me to pay for her trip. That deserves some respect, doesn't it? As I mentioned in my last post, her husband wasn't thrilled about having to bail her out of that situation. In all modesty, I feel the bill equaled almost his monthly income. Who would be happy spending a month's salary paying for their wife's extravagant hotel bill? As expected, Ella painted me as the villain to her husband. Things got so bad that he refused to attend Thanksgiving dinner at my in-laws' house because I would be there. Every year, my mother-in-law hosts this dinner, and this year she wanted to make it special, especially given my father-in-law's declining health. Her husband declined the invitation, and when my mother-in-law confronted him, he said he didn't want to share a table with someone as evil as me, who humiliates a person with fewer financial resources. My mother-in-law then told him the truth about Ella's behavior on the trip. She suggested he look at the vacation photos to see how blatantly she left me out. There was barely a group photo in which I was included. I actually have a decent relationship with her husband, neither very close nor very distant. We meet every year at Thanksgiving and sometimes on other holidays. I always thought he was a good guy, and I never looked down on him or anyone else. After hearing all this from Rachel, I hesitated to attend the dinner, but I still went for my father-in-law's sake. Ella and her husband didn't show up. When my father-in-law was around, my mother-in-law said they couldn't come because they were visiting his parents. I didn't realize until later that this was just a lie to keep my father-in-law from stressing out. After he went to sleep, my mother-in-law told me the truth. She and her husband have been fighting non-stop, and she has become unreasonable. She constantly belittles him for his low income and now expects him to take a second job on top of his full-time job. He agreed, but only on the condition that he would not be responsible for household chores or childcare. Ella didn't like that. I was surprised to learn that she only works 20 hours a week but expects him to work over 60 hours between the two jobs and still do his share of the housework. My mother-in-law has been trying to advise Ella and make her understand the reality of her situation, but it seems Ella has tasted the luxury lifestyle and now wants to maintain it. Finally, my mother-in-law had to tell Ella that if she ends up divorced, she shouldn't expect her parents to step in to help her. When Rachel and I got back from dinner, we talked about how it was probably a mistake to bring Ella on the trip in the first place. I keep remembering a quote I read at one of the resorts. Once you experience the luxury of a private island, you will never step foot on a public island. The same goes for flying business class. I feel bad for her husband. The poor guy is suffering. I hope Ella comes to her senses before it's too late. I wanted to share this update thinking it might be useful for someone else dealing with similar family dynamics. It's frustrating when someone treats you like a stranger, especially when you are trying to be generous. Despite her behavior, I'm glad I went to Thanksgiving dinner for my father-in-law, and this shows how much I care about family. Despite the tension, it's unfortunate that Ella is creating this division, but it seems the truth about her behavior is finally coming to light. I hope she takes some time to think and realizes the impact of her attitude before it further affects her relationships. Update 3. Well, everything finally blew up with Ella and her husband, and divorce seems inevitable. The situation has become unbearable between them, and he has reached his limit, mostly due to the weight of Ella's debts and the constant stress this has added to his life. For starters, I feel bad for him. He is not to blame for his wife's decisions or her attitude during the trip, but he is still the one paying part of the price in every way. Since the conflict erupted between them, Ella has done nothing but continue to blame me for all her problems. It's easier for Ella to blame me and say her debts and broken marriage are the result of my lack of support, rather than accepting that things are this way because she has been unable to apologize, acknowledge her behavior, and face the consequences of her actions. Even though she had multiple opportunities to make amends and apologize, she clings to her version of events, and I am not going to take the blame for her marriage falling apart. I've spoken with her parents, who don't back her on this issue either. In fact, they are frustrated with Ella and say she has done enough to earn things getting to this point. In their own words, Ella has bought all the tickets to ruin her marriage. They know the situation is complex, but they can't even take her side in this story. They are worried about the impact all this will have on the kids and the family dynamic, but they believe Ella must face the consequences of her decisions. I also spoke with her husband, who, to my relief, doesn't blame me for the situation. He told me that although the debt issue was the trigger, they already had previous problems in their marriage, mostly due to Ella's lack of commitment to work and contribute to the household. Ultimately, it reached a breaking point. That's why they are now living separately, as Ella has moved out of the house. But don't think her husband kicked her out. Ella left by her own choice. The husband gave her two options. Either Ella stayed in the house with the kids and took care of everything while he left, or he stayed and took care of the house and the kids, but then Ella had to leave. And well, to everyone's surprise, Ella chose the second option. She preferred to leave the house rather than make the effort to stay with her kids and take care of the home. This gave me a completely new perspective on her husband. He is someone who truly doesn't fear hard work. During one of our talks, I started considering the possibility of offering him a job opportunity at my company. People with his work ethic and commitment are always valuable on a team, and I think I could find him a position with a good salary and better benefits. In a way, I feel I owe it to him, because although he has no blame for what his wife did, he is also a victim of the situation and is struggling to get ahead. So, in summary, that's what has been happening lately. It has been an exhausting process for everyone, but I feel things are starting to get on track, albeit at a high cost for some people. I might update again in a few months if things evolve, if Ella and her husband finally divorce, or if anything relevant happens in my life. Edit. Some people asked me where Ella lives now, and it is at one of her friends' houses. Her parents made it very clear that they didn't want her in their house. Update 4. Several months have passed since the last time I updated, and in this time, many things happened in my life and in my extended family's life. Now that everything has calmed down a bit, I want to tell you the aftermath of what happened and how things have evolved. First, I have to start with some sad news. My father-in-law passed away. In the end, he was right when he said the trip to Miami would be his last big outing. It is devastating because I really loved that man, and losing him has been a hard blow for all of us. There were those who told me I should have confronted Ella's behavior sooner, that I should have put a stop to her outbursts from the very first moment. However, I am grateful I didn't do it. Enduring Ella during that trip meant my father-in-law could enjoy a vacation with his family. We even had our moment on the beach, where I still remember some things we talked about together. He was always there for me and treated me like a son. He gave me advice, helped me when I was just starting my life with Rachel, and taught me more than I can put into words. I know my wife will miss him deeply, and my mother-in-law too, but I feel that I have also lost someone who was a pillar in my life, like when he helped us when we were starting our careers. He was a wise and generous man who asked for nothing in return for his help and love. It makes me happy to know that I was able to contribute in part to his happiness in his final days. Moving on to the topic of my sister-in-law and her divorce, the papers are already signed, so Ella is officially divorced. I am sure you are wondering what happened with her debts and my ex-brother-in-law. Well, during the divorce process, he gave her two fairly reasonable options for their situation. Ella could choose to share custody of the children, but in that case, she would be completely responsible for her personal debts. Her credit card debt remained Ella's, but she would also have to pay him back the money he used to cover the debt she had accumulated in Miami, deducted from the spousal support he would have to pay her. The other option was for him to keep primary custody of the children, meaning they would live with him during the week and only spend weekends with Ella, and he would take care of the debt. To no one's surprise, Ella chose the second option. This agreement benefits him, as he won't have to pay child support since the kids spend most of their time with him. Some might think Ella missed a major financial opportunity by not wanting primary custody, and maybe it was a mistake for Ella from that perspective. But deep down, I think Ella simply doesn't have a genuine interest in her children. Proof of this is that she has already started dating other men, all of them with comfortable financial positions. According to the rumors that have reached us, it seems her intention was simply to detach herself from her family responsibilities and find someone who could offer her the life of luxury she craved so much. On the other hand, to give this update a positive ending, since it started a bit down, my ex-brother-in-law is now officially my co-worker. As I mentioned earlier, I was able to get him a position at my company, and I am very happy for him. The pay is better, and he also has benefits that come in very handy, like the on-site daycare for his youngest child. However, we wanted to be strategic about the timing. We made sure he started his new job just at the right time so he wouldn't have to pay higher spousal support due to his new salary. Despite how difficult all this has been for him, he says he can finally start to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Life somehow moves on. We have all gone through difficult times, but I feel fortunate to be able to say that the situation in general has improved. In fact, we are starting to plan our next trip. This time it will be a different trip, since my father-in-law won't be with us for obvious reasons, and that leaves a void that will be hard to fill. However, we plan to take my mother-in-law, who needs a change of scenery and a little cheer. I am sure she will also enjoy a family getaway that allows her to distract herself and move forward, at least as much as she can. And don't worry, we also have a trip scheduled for just Rachel and me. We just wanted to do something nice for my mother-in-law. As you can imagine, there is someone who clearly will not be part of this trip. I think it is quite clear who I am referring to. Ella is the last person we would want to invite, and I think we all know that her presence is no longer welcome.